If the council does not get paid its council tax, then it will apply for what is called a liability order. The document shown here is what a liability order looks like. It empowers the council to collect unpaid council tax by an attachment of earnings order, but if the taxpayer is self-employed, then it will instruct bailiffs. In this video, we show you what steps you can take to legally stop bailiffs and get your council tax arrears written off using rules that councils and bailiffs don't want you to know. When you get the threat of bailiffs coming round to collect unpaid council tax, you have a list of options you can take to put a stop to it. Pay the arrears direct to the council and give a notice to the bailiff. Dispute the council tax arrears. Tell the council, you are a vulnerable person. Ask the council to suspend the liability order and more time to pay. Ask the council to write off the arrears. Stop further council tax arrears, claim council tax reduction. Approach your local councillor, or CEO of the council. Apply for a debt relief order or go bankrupt. Do nothing. We will now go through each one of these steps individually.
Pay the arrears direct to the council and give a notice to the bailiff.
If you pay the amount outstanding directly to the council, the enforcement power ceases to be exercisable, and the bailiff may not recover their fees and charges. After paying the council, you must send an email to the bailiff company, and a text message to the bailiff on his mobile, telling them that the amount outstanding has been paid direct to the council. If you do not give this notice, then the bailiff is not liable if he takes an enforcement step. Paragraph 59 Subparagraph 2, of Schedule 12 of the Tribunals Courts and Enforcement Act, 2007, says,
"The enforcement agent is not liable unless he had notice, when the step was taken, that the amount outstanding had been paid in full."
You can download a template notice from dealingwithbailiffs.uk. When you have given the notice to the bailiff by text message to his phone, make a screenshot to record the time it was given. Also, send a copy to the bailiff company. And again, make a screenshot of the sent email to record the time the notice was given. For the most part, the bailiff will move on. But, you may get an angry bailiff coming round demanding his fees. You can apply for a detailed assessment, which is an application to the court to examine whether the bailiff is allowed to demand their fees after the enforcement power has ceased to be exercisable. In this application, you must exhibit a copy of the bailiff's demand, and the screenshots of the notice showing the time it was given to the bailiff and to the bailiff company, and you can apply for your costs. The law says, when the amount outstanding has been paid, the bailiff may not take an enforcement step. Paragraph 6 Subparagraph 3, of Schedule 12 of the Tribunals Courts and Enforcement Act, 2007, says,
"The property in all goods ceases to be bound when the amount outstanding is paid."
The law also defines what amount outstanding means. The legal definition of amount outstanding is provided in paragraph 50 subparagraph 3 of Schedule 12 of the Tribunals Courts and Enforcement Act, 2007, which says,
"The amount outstanding is the amount of the debt which remains unpaid, or an amount that the creditor agrees to accept in full satisfaction of the debt, and any amounts recoverable out of proceeds in accordance with regulations under paragraph 62, costs."
That means the amount outstanding is the debt owed to the council, plus any costs recoverable out of proceeds. The word costs is also defined by paragraph 62 of Schedule 12 of the Tribunals Courts and Enforcement Act, 2007, which says,
Costs. Regulations may make provision for the recovery by any person from the debtor of amounts in respect of costs of enforcement-related services. The regulations may provide for recovery to be out of proceeds or otherwise. The amount recoverable under the regulations in any case is to be determined by or under the regulations. The regulations may in particular provide for the amount, if disputed, to be assessed in accordance with rules of court. Enforcement-related services means anything done under or in connection with an enforcement power, or in connection with obtaining an enforcement power, or any services used for the purposes of a provision of this schedule or regulations under it.
Therefore, it is in regulations that says how costs may be recovered. Regulation 4 of the Taking Control of Goods, Fees, Regulations 2014 says,
recovery of fees for enforcement-related services from the debtor. Paragraph 1. The enforcement agent may recover from the debtor the fees indicated in the schedule in accordance with this regulation by reference to the stage, or stages, of enforcement for which enforcement-related services have been supplied. The fees referred to in paragraph 1 may be recovered out of proceeds.
So, the bailiff may only recover his fees out of proceeds. But, if the bailiff has not taken control of any of your goods, then there are no proceeds. And, therefore, the bailiff may not recover his fees, because the enforcement power has ceased to be exercisable when the amount outstanding was paid. Bailiff companies try to argue that the word, proceeds, has another definition. That any money paid directly to the council, is proceeds. That definition is not prescribed in any of the enforcement regulations. So, if you have an angry bailiff threatening you with enforcement for his fees, then send a text message to the bailiff on his mobile and state,
please send me a statement of account.
Then make a screenshot of the sent text message, and you can now apply to the court to stop the bailiff making further threats, and apply for a detailed assessment under Civil Procedure Rule 84.16, and the council will pay your costs. Don't worry about the bailiff getting your mobile number. You can always block his number from calling you. When you apply for a detailed assessment of the bailiff's fees, the application calls for an immediate stop on the bailiff from continuing any action against you.
Dispute the council tax arrears.
Section 6 of the Local Government Finance Act 1992 says who is liable for council tax. Under subparagraph 2, it says,
persons liable to pay council tax. He is a resident of the dwelling and has a freehold interest in the whole or any part of it. He is such a resident, or he is the owner of the dwelling.
So, the liability for council tax arises if you either live in the property, or own it. If you did not live or own the property on any dates which the council is charging you council tax, then you can raise a dispute. You need to show evidence that you were living elsewhere for those dates in dispute, and you can require the council to cease enforcement until they have considered your dispute, and given you a revised liability.
Tell the council, you are a vulnerable person.
To be a vulnerable debtor for the purpose of bailiff enforcement, official guidelines say you must be
elderly, have a disability, which does not need to be physical, seriously ill, a single parent, pregnant, unemployed, and you don't need to be claiming benefits, or have difficulty understanding English.
You must contact the council immediately. Tell them to suspend the enforcement for 30 days, and give evidence of your vulnerability. This is not a permanent solution, but it does give you extra time to deal with the debt. If the council fobs you off with the bailiffs, then you may apply for a detailed assessment hearing under Civil Procedure Rule 84.16, because debtors are not liable for enforcement fees, currently £310, if the council does not withdraw the bailiff from enforcement without giving you adequate opportunity to get advice in relation to the enforcement power.
Ask the council to suspend the liability order and more time to pay.
Paragraph 24 of the Taking Control of Goods National Standards, published by the Ministry of Justice, says,
debtors must not be pressed to make unrealistic offers and should be asked to consider carefully any offer they voluntarily make and where possible refer to free debt advice.
That means, the council must not pressure debtors who cannot pay, into making agreements they cannot afford. So approach the council, with a statement of means, and make an offer to pay. If the council suspends the enforcement power, then the bailiff no longer has the right to visit you, or make demands for money, and you are no longer liable for the bailiff's £310 fees.
Ask the council to write off the arrears.
This is a very little known law, and councils and bailiffs, and even debt counsellors, don't want you knowing about it. But Parliament has enshrined in law anyway to give a last resort means of protection for people on low income. Debt charities prefer to sell debt management plans, but this option costs you nothing, except your council tax arrears. Section 13A sub-paragraph 2, of the Local Government Finance Act 1992, says,
Reductions by billing authority. Each billing authority in England must make a scheme specifying the reductions which are to apply to amounts of council tax payable, in respect of dwellings situated in its area, by persons whom the authority considers to be in financial need, or persons in classes consisting of persons whom the authority considers to be, in general, in financial need.
Under sub-paragraph 6, it says,
The power under subsection 1(c) includes power to reduce an amount to nil.
That means, you can ask the council to reduce, or completely write off your arrears, if, for example, you are in financial need, or there is no prospect the arrears will ever be paid, or the bailiff enforcement is having a profound detrimental impact on your health. You have nothing to lose in asking, and StopTheBailiffs.uk has a template letter you can use to make that request. Apply for council tax reduction. Go online and apply for council tax benefits. If you are eligible, then that stops any more arrears building up. It only takes a few minutes, and you have nothing to lose. If you are unemployed, you can ask the council to suspend enforcement, which can give you some breathing space.
Approach your local councillor, or chief executive at your local council.
A town hall councillor has greater authority than the civil servants that work at the town hall. You can approach them and ask them to intervene and stop the enforcement. Your councillor can make a plea to the council chief executive to end the enforcement, and they even have the power to write off your arrears. Remember, it is a discretionary power, so you must plead a case and a worthy cause to write off your council tax arrears. If you succeed, the bailiffs will be called off your case and your arrears will be reduced, or written off.
Apply for an individual voluntary arrangement, a debt relief order, or go bankrupt.
This should be considered as a last resort, and only if you have other debts that you cannot afford to pay. An EVA is an individual voluntary arrangement. It is a contract with your creditors to pay all or part of your debts. You agree to make regular payments to a regulated insolvency practitioner, who will divide your money between your creditors. Your insolvency practitioner works out what you can afford to repay and how long the EVA lasts. You'll have to give details about your financial situation, for example your assets, debts, income and creditors. Your insolvency practitioner will contact your creditors. The EVA will start if the creditors holding 75% of your debts agree to it. It will apply to all your creditors, including any who disagreed to it. An EVA will stop your creditors taking action against you for your debts, including sending bailiffs. You can also get a debt relief order from the official receiver. The official receiver is an officer of the bankruptcy court, but you must apply through an authorized debt advisor. They'll help you fill in the paperwork. A debt relief order is a way of dealing with your debts if you can't afford to pay them. It means you don't have to pay certain kinds of debt for a specified period, usually 12 months. Bankruptcy is the nuclear option. You can apply to make yourself bankrupt if you cannot pay your debts. Your application will be looked at by someone who works for the insolvency service called an adjudicator. They'll decide if you should be made bankrupt. After 12 months you're usually released, or what they call, discharged from your bankruptcy restrictions and debts. Assets that were part of your estate during the bankruptcy period can still be used to pay your debts.
Do nothing.
If you ignore bailiffs, and do not open your door to unexpected callers, and do not have a car outside your home, then there is not much a bailiff can do. There is only a certain amount of time he will keep banging the door, but eventually, he will move on. The notice of enforcement only has an enforcement life of 12 months from the date of issue printed on it. Most councils have a contract with bailiff companies that requires bailiffs to recover the debt within 90 days, or, if there is still a prospect of recovering the debt, the council has the discretion to give the bailiff a total of 180 days to collect the debt. After that, the council can apply for a committal order, which is an order sending you to prison for non-payment of council tax. This is only for people who willfully refuse to pay council tax. Not for people that cannot afford to pay. Most magistrates do not like sending people to prison anyway, because it costs the taxpayer more than it's worth, and rarely achieves the goal of recovering the council tax. It is intended to be a deterrent rather than a practical solution. If you have learned something new, then why not share this video? Dealingwithbailiffs.co.uk is a website offering lots of free advice for dealing with bailiff enforcement. We also offer a helpline where we show you with inside knowledge on how to stop bailiffs, and recover damages for enforcement impropriety. We also have solicitors that specialize in applying for redress for non-compliant bailiff action, and have brought many successful claims putting money and belongings back where they belong. Until then, if in doubt, keep 'em out.